In today's video, I have a conversation with Jamie M. Harrison, a fellow Eddie Wong amps endorsee, but also just an incredible gigging and session musician who is a multi-instrumentalist. And we talk about everything from how he started getting into music growing up in a very musical family, all the similarities in our gear childhood, and how good tone can save lives. Definitely check out Jamie's music and his YouTube channel. I'll have all his links down in the description below. Let's get into the conversation.
Dude, what's going on? How you been since NAMM?
Been good. It's just been nonstop work and grind since. I'm sure same on your end, right?
Yeah, man. It's been the craziest. I mean, like, beginning of the year is normally pretty chill, but
Right.
it has not been this year, which is good. I'm super thankful for it. But yeah, it's been nonstop, lot less sleep this year so far than I was planning on. But, you know, it looks like on Instagram and everything, you've been playing a bunch of gigs. Like what type of gigs?
Lots of like singer-songwriters in New Mexico, folks doing original stuff, cover bands, you know, some fly dates with original artists, corporate events, you know, it's kind of all over the place, you know, but diversified's good, right? You know?
Yeah. I'm the same. It's you never know. Some gigs, and it's like, thankfully this year, a lot of the gigs I've been doing have been, I mean, I don't even like gig that much. I'm mostly a studio guy, but I've played a lot more like corporate events, and they've been like really good. Sometimes it's like a really good paycheck,
right? And
then that's like the only good thing that's happening about it. Like the rest of it just sucks major balls. But I have played a few this year that have been like actually pretty chill. Like I show up and there's a stage and a sound guy, and I'm like, what?
He's got an iPad at least.
yeah. I mean, corporate events, you just never know.
Yeah. It seems like some of that has stepped up its game though. PSAV, cross country, at least some of the big hotels that do conventions a lot, they tend to have folks that kind of, you know, they'll have QSCs, they'll have, you know, at least some kind of X32 rack mount or something, you know. So now I know you got a ton of cool amps, but do you do the no amp thing, the like a Helix or a Boss IR2 or something? Or
I've got, so right here, it's kind of out of the shot. Well, I've got the where is it? Down there is the Fractal stuff. And then so I've got so that's a FM3, and then one of the foot pedals, and then I've got the Axe 3 right here, and I use that all the time, but I don't use it out. I am thinking about getting into like I'm doing a lot of scoring, and that's this year is like I'm trying to really put a lot of energy into that.
Right.
But that's kind of different than playing guitar on people's records, even if like nobody's going to hear the music that I've played on the majority of it. Like, so I've been thinking about getting into like maybe building some like patches and selling some stuff that's not necessarily like, here's another, you know, JCM 800 pack, but more for scoring, like using the guitar as more of an atmospheric thing. So I've been really I've just got to decide, if I'm going to do that, then I need to like bite the bullet and get into a Helix and a Quad Cortex,
right?
And a Kemper, and I'm just not, I don't know, but I'm super, like, I'm not a, you gotta play tube amp. Like, there's nothing that's gonna beat a tube amp in a room.
Right.
But
in a mix.
But that's the thing, like, you're gonna understand this more than most people. And then I'm talking too much, but you're gonna understand this more than most people do. that's everyone's argument with like, you know, people who are anti modelers or whatever. And even dudes who are like, who I know who are like road dogs, like, you know, touring all the time. But like, no one has ever, like any song you've ever heard, ever in your life, has never been the sound of an amp in a room. It's the sound of a speaker being mic'd. And
Right.
that's what a modeler does excellently.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, yeah, you don't get the let me jam in my bedroom for me, you know?
Right.
Like that experience maybe is different. But like, I don't know the last time that I turned on an amp just to play it and just like, oh man, this is how this sounds in this room, you know, like, so that part of it is like, it's valid. It's a valid argument, except for if you're trying to play guitar that has anything to do with making music.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so, which is like, you know, it's a little bit of a cynical perspective, but like, yeah. So I think I just saw on Instagram you did that the Dinosaural.
Yeah,
pedal.
yeah.
That pedal is so dope, and I'm about to pull the trigger on one. I'm also
Woo!
I'm waiting. I'm just waiting because I don't want to spend like $1,200 on pedals in the same month. And I've been on the wait list for a King of Tone for 5 years or whatever.
Oh, you're
And
due.
the
Okay.
day I got on the wait list is June 2nd, 2018. So like, I'm whatever the next like date is, I'm being fulfilled. But I saw that you played on your Instagram that Dinosaural pedal through was it the Boss IR 200?
It was the IR2, the small single.
What in the
format.
world? Why does
Yeah.
that happen? Did you just see the thumbs up thing?
I was just bam. How did that even?
Yeah, look at that.
Oh yeah! Wow.
Why does that happen?
I don't know. It's cool though.
Okay.
My,
Anyways,
my Zoom doesn't do that. So
so that was the IR2.
yeah. So they just came out with that after the 200 series, and it's just like it's a single Boss stomp box. It's got
Yeah.
spinnable, you know, all the amp models and the cabinets to go with them. And yeah, I just said it. Dan is in the UK from Dinosaural, and I just put on the Marshall generic setting on the IR2 and said, all right, let's go.
Yeah, dude, that's sick. It sounded really good.
Thank you.
I need
thank
to
you.
look into the Boss modelers and stuff. So is that the only modelers that you've gotten into, or have you gotten into other ones?
I had a friend that was working for Headrush. Actually, he was in Music Brands, which has Headrush, and I told him, I said, you know, like I'm thinking about going ampless, you know, for fly dates and all this stuff, and you know, I think I'm gonna get an Axe-Fx because that's what a lot of my friends use, and some of the Helix stuff. They've made some changes, so I like the high end better now on Helix than I used to. There used to be some stuff I thought was a little fizzy in the first generations of it, but I'm kind of down with it now. But he said, just hold on, I can't tell you much, but just wait. And then Headrush came out, and it's got all the touchscreen stuff, and it was just like the easiest thing in the world to operate first quad processor, you know, device like that. So, and now everybody's doing crazy stuff, but it's like they were kind of like that first generation. So I have two Headrushes at the moment that I still use for fly dates and stuff.
Yeah, they were the first ones. They had like the biggest screen out of anybody, and they were the first
7
touch
inches.
screen.
Yeah.
I didn't see touch screen. I mean, the only other one is the Quad Cortex.
Mm-hmm.
But Headrush was like way first with that, like by a couple years, which in today's the way
It's huge.
the way stuff comes out today, like that's a huge advantage. So
and
that's
it was cool too because they designed their own architecture. Because I guess most of the other stuff prior to that was all a Linux system or some kind of Windows based deal, and it was kind of like, okay, like the processors can do that, like you can kind of put a new spin on it, or you can cheat a little bit to make like reverb tails kind of hang out, but you know, there's only XYZ you can do with that format. So they had to write all new code, everything. You know.
Wow, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like there was a while there in the early 2000s, like I forgot what the one chip was. God, I can't think of the name of it, but it's like every pedal that you saw at Guitar Center or Sam Ash or whatever, like whether it was a chorus pedal or a delay pedal or a phaser or like it was basically this one chip, and everybody's just like, the only difference between pedal A and pedal B is like, oh, they added a knob that's just called thick or something, you know? Like, yeah. So it's kind of, I don't know, it's really interesting the way the industry does that. Like everybody kind of has their own, you know, whether it's a take on a Tube Screamer or it's literally the same chip.
Right.
But it seems like some companies like have way more success with it than the other companies. And I don't know if that's just down to a marketing budget or what, but they're like, I've seen pedals that I know for a fact are the same, and it's like one dies in a matter of like 4 months, and then the other one is like popular for a couple years, and like they have several versions of it. They're just different paints, which is all, I mean, like,
yeah,
I'm not upset that somebody's found success. It's just funny how the market chooses in that way.
I mean there's so many aspects of it. It's like, okay, like who's your guru, right? Like everybody makes some kind of clone thing, and they're all souped up, right? And they all know the recipe, so it's like, okay, you buy this guy's clone, this guy, you know, and some of it is, he's like, okay, I'm gonna do a weird thing with EQ, so that's my deal. I'm gonna do a big pedal, I'm gonna do a mini pedal, you know. So there's all that, you know. But at the end of the day, it's like whatever. It's pantry staples, right? Like everyone's got a turkey sandwich, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's so great. Pantry staples, like you got to have it. But also, on the other hand, we live in a day and time where somebody goes, you know what? I want a Klon that's got a mid-frequency control. And it's just a Klon, and it's just got a mid-frequency control extra. And there's a place for that. Like the nuances, because at the end of the day, going back to like modeler, like if you're making music, I think it's really just about you. It's not because somebody's going to hear that this was this variation or revision of this one pedal in the signal path. But I think it's more about like, oh, does this inspire you to play differently? And God, I mean, like, there's so it feels like the bubble's going to pop at some point, but like, man, there's just unlimited amounts of gear, just period.
Yeah. It's an interesting, it's harder to make money for a lot of folks, but there's cooler gear for everybody, you know. Yeah, it's strange.
Well, I mean, the you know, it's a crowded market. There's a lot more people making money, but it's a lot harder for the individuals to like. I mean, I think it's hard for everybody.
It's hard for anybody. I mean, I got friends with Grammys that they basically said, hey, I'm still hustling too, you know. And I mean, maybe the difference is he's got a big house in Tarzana, you know. Private school in California is different than private school in New Mexico, or, you know, for the kids. But I mean, you know, at the highest level, people were saying, yeah, you know, I'm still handing out business cards, and I'm still on my P's and Q's, you know, like. So I think everyone's feeling it, but don't you think it comes down to consistency? Like the people who are serious and really on it, they always find work. And the people that are wannabes and just kind of dip their toe, I'm going to be a YouTube star and I'm going to do 5 videos and I'm going to knock it out. That's not how you grow a following, you know? I'm guilty of
Right.
that, you know?
Oh, dude. Yeah, me too.
It's hard to post like all the time, you know, if
God,
you got
it
gigs
is.
and jobs and
Yeah, it's well, and like I'm working on an album. For me, I've never put out like my own music really. Like I've never really tried. And it's like one of those things where I'm super guilty of hating the game because I kind of do hate the game and I'm pretty anti-capitalist and I'm a
Right.
you know, a fucking hippie who lives in Los Angeles. But I like hate the game, but I don't even try. And I'm mad that I'm not succeeding. Like that, I'm
Mhm.
super guilty of that. But I think you're right. It's the people who are like, here's what it comes down to. And this is what I felt like NAMM this year. This is the conversation I had with most people, whether it was like big companies or not. It's important to remember, even the biggest companies, those are your real humans that you're interacting with. But like nobody is doing any of this because we think it's the most financially advantageous venture. Like no one we do this because we love it. And I think that consistency comes down to like, do you really like guitar? Or is there no other option but to obsess about guitar for your whole life?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, like whether I was making money or not, I would still be doing the same thing. Like
Exactly.
you know, if there's universal basic income today, like I'd basically be doing the same stuff. I probably would turn down a lot of gigs, but like I basically would be doing the same thing. And I get the feeling, you know, the same thing goes for you. Like you love
totally.
it. It's evident that you love it. Eddie, our buddy Eddie, these
Mhm.
amps that we both have behind us. Yeah. Shout out Eddie. I'd seen your demos, because you've done demos of like both the Quantum Zen and the Polaris, right?
Mhm.
And then so he introduced us. Yeah, we only got like a second to talk at NAMM because it's NAMM and everybody's running around. But you did a ton of stuff at NAMM.
Yeah.
So you were playing a bunch. Tell me about like all the stuff you were doing, because I know you played with Larry Mitchell, who's
The guru.
dude, what a vibe. Like I've been loving his guitar playing forever.
Right.
But you played keys with him, right?
Mm-hmm. So a little bit about my background. I started playing keyboards when I was like 3, 4, somewhere in there. My
Okay.
dad was a touring musician. He had a band called Skafish. It looks like ska and fish. And he was the first American artist signed to IRS Records. And the first artist came out of the UK was The Police. And the manager was the drummer of The Police's brother. And Stuart Copeland is actually, he just came out on the Rick Beato interview like 2 days ago or something. So my dad, he had all this, you know, he was touring the world at like 20, you know.
Wow.
We have video of him performing for like 40,000 people on, you know, a show with The Police. And
Wow.
so that's how I got started. He's a classical and jazz piano virtuoso, plays incredible guitar. He was friends with like Muddy Waters and people like that.
Wow.
So I've grown up, I think I started guitar when I was 12, somewhere in there. So I've just kind of had this multi-instrumentalist thing my whole life. And it's kind of like I do some of this and some of that. So different seasons take me more in a keyboard route and that. So, but yeah, I mean, Larry is like, I'm not going to try to like out Larry Mitchell, you know, like out shred Larry, you know.
Yeah.
It's a losing, you know, but no, he's been a friend of mine. He lived in New Mexico for a number of years in Santa Fe. So he still has a lot of roots here, still performs here. And he's helped me with, I mean, the whole modeler thing. I asked, hey, how do you get it to sit right in a mix in a room? You know, you're the only guy I know who's really doing it and sounds legit with it. You know, I mean, there's other folks that, you know, if you have a sound guy and a big, you know, Midas console, okay, you can flub some things, but So he's helped with a lot of that and mentored me in many ways. But yeah, it was super fun to do. And we had Andy Timmons up there and all kinds of other, our friend Bridget Rios Purdy, she sang with Paul Rogers. She came up and sang some. So yeah, kind of all-star jam.
Yeah, dude. I love Larry's jam at NAMM. Like it's 10
so years, fun. I think.
Yeah. So fun. So that's incredible. So that's so much to unpack there. I mean, so you grew up kind of, just fully being immediately immersed in music and the full-time musician life. Was there, so you started on piano, which, by the way, I'm just going to go out and say it, as a full-time professional guitar player, piano is better in every way. It just is. I wish I could play keys. Like, I can, bullshit my way through some stuff, but I wish I could really play, like, express myself on the keys. So I'll lay that out there. But so at what point did you decide to start picking stuff up? Or was it because, like, your dad was kind of multi-instrumentalist and there's all this stuff around, you just wanted to explore it all?
So my dad did both. And like you said, there was just kind of stuff in the house, like I remember he had these like Roland, like an R8 drum machine, which was like the hot thing because it had like human groove synthesis, you could like swing the beats and stuff, like, which was a big deal for its time. And it had the little memory cards that were proprietary, so you can get more sounds. And but my brother, he played bass. So we had a bass rig in the house, and my brother would just say, "Hey, you want to jam? You want to mess around?" So he had a Boss Metal Zone that we plugged into his like PV bass amp, just like, yes.
Oh, dude. Yeah.
So, and then my dad had, this was like the early 90s. So he had this crimson red Kramer Beretta and a Kramer Pacer. So, and he still got them. So so my brother plugged that in and he said, "All right, this is how you do a bar chord. You just put your hand here," and he just kind of like, and I hit it and I was like, "Oh, cool," and I already knew rhythm and stuff. So, and notes. Yeah. So I figured out like Lenny Kravitz Fly Away or something, like it, just 4-chord tune. And, and my brother and I, we just put on the stereo and jam with the stereo. So we'd have to tune down to E flat if we played with Guns N' Roses and like,
oh yeah.
Dad just comes running in like, "What? Who the hell's playing guitar?" Like, I'm not playing guitar, and then there's a bass. So, and then he's like, "All right, so we're doing lessons." And, nice. He got me started and, so yeah, it's pretty wild. And, we would do lessons and stuff like 50s guitar and, Elvis Presley songs and stuff like that. And, my dad is a great jazz musician, so he kind of laid the foundation for some of that. And, just kind of taught me about how music works and how the instruments fit together. And, Dad's kept me fed for, 30 years now.
Yeah, dude, I remember my dad taught me, he won, it's actually over there, this red Strat. It's one of the first years that the Fender had the Made in Mexico series, and he won it in this ugly guitar contest at our local music store, Martin Music. And he like peeled the frets back and like the whole thing was like crazy. He won this Mexican Strat, but he was always an acoustic player. And I remember the day that I think he won that, and then this like crate practice amp, but it's like the ones that it was like carpet. Like, gross. But it had like overdrive on it. And he's like, I remember the day I stayed home from school for some reason, and he taught me feedback. And it was just like from that day, my life changed. But so that's yeah. So I can relate to that and just having stuff everywhere. And for me, I got really into the gear at a pretty young age because I was like learning guitar and exploring these different sounds. We had a couple, like my mom and my grandmother both taught piano, and I pretended like I was reading the music, but I was just like memorizing by ear or whatever. And so that's why they stopped. Oh, dude, yeah. Well, then they just stopped teaching me because they're like, you're not trying here. But I got really into the gear, like super into magazines, and I was just obsessed with like
Musician's Friend, right?
Dude, Musician's Friend magazine. Yes. I remember, this is so funny. My little brother also plays, and he originally started playing bass because I play guitar, so he played bass. So it's like real parallels here.
Yeah.
But I mean, we would just we got to the point where like we kind of leveled up. I saved up some money, got like an Oscar Schmidt ES335 copy.
My first guitar was an Oscar Schmidt too. I paid like $120 for this like Dreadnought acoustic I could barely play, but like,
yeah,
the action was like super high, and I was like,
oh yeah. It was Oscar shit is like
Yeah.
the way it, yeah. But there was a Musician's Friend like catalog from who knows when, but it had like this little like pull out, enter to win this giveaway, and it had all these guitars listed, like a Zakk Wylde Epiphone Les Paul, and just, you know, a bunch of like intermediate but like the coolest stuff. And we spent days figuring out how, like, were we gonna like trade this guitar in to get something else, and how we're gonna split up the winnings if we won this giveaway. We spent, I mean, no telling how many hours planning all this out. Then we give it to my mom to fill out because you have to be 18.
right.
And it was like 5 years old. Like the giveaway was like 5 years previous. So we wasted all that time. But it was just like the Musician's Friend catalog that's what I lived. Like that was what I read. And everything. Like, and I got super nerdy. Like I loved the pages that were just cables just as much as the amps and guitars
or like
everything.
Gorilla Snot, like for like drumstick grips, you know? Like,
yeah. Oh yeah. So the Metal Zone into the PV bass amp is a legendary.
Legend.
So what are some of the like early rigs? Like at what point did you start getting into electric guitar?
So that would have been about when I was 12, and I was already performing like so my dad taught Suzuki classical piano, which teaches ear training. So you still got to read the minuet and all that, but there's ear training components as well. So and that's really what kept me, you know, and in Chicago everybody played by ear, you know, or all the surrounding areas. It probably the same in Memphis too. It's like, hey, what key you in? Oh, I'm right around here, you know, and just
exactly.
And you learn to see where people's hands are and kind of go, well, okay, I'm close, you know.
Yeah, you got to read that left hand, like
So so I was playing stuff there, and I think we got whenever the Yamaha Motif line of keyboards. At some point, I'd asked Dad for like a better keyboard, and because I keep borrowing his, and you know, so he got me a keyboard, and it had all these guitar sounds, and then I was like, well, I want to get some guitar stuff now, and I had this. He had a Rockman in the house too, so like the Boss.
Oh yeah.
Or not Boss, Boston. You know, the Tom
Scholz. Yeah. Dude, we had one too. I had the one that plugged. It was like a later model that plugged into the guitar, like it had the jack on it.
Yeah. It's super cool. So I wanted to get some action there, so I get like little pedals here or there, but we got like a Digitech, because in its day before Line 6, Digitech was like the king, you know. And what's his name? Tom Cram, I think he's on Facebook. He's back doing, you know, the Bad Monkey and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But we got this Multi-Effects RP3, and it was just gigantic. Dude, you know, it was yellow. So mine was canary yellow, and I had all my. It sounded like CC DeVille, you know. So all my brother would play all these like metal tunes, and I'd be sitting there with the, you know, the pointy guitar trying to.
The best thing about CC DeVille is like every shot of a Poison music video, he's holding a different guitar, and I thought that was the most cool thing ever.
Totally. and funny thing, so Travis Larson got up and jammed with us on the Larry Mitchell thing, and for whatever reason, he had a blue Digitech. He had the same era Digitech thing, but it was the blue one.
Wow.
So maybe that one had the tube, but that's what he had in his van for NAMM. And I was like, dude, full circle, you know?
Yeah, seriously. So you get the RP, what was it? The RP what?
RP3.
3, okay.
Yeah, the big yellow one.
Yeah, I remember, because Digitech was the like predecessor to what Line 6 kind of became in the market there.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get a multi-effect anything until I got a floor pod.
Oh yeah.
Right, it was the black, but it was it's the kidney bean
with the volume pedal.
With the volume pedal, and
I wanted it so bad,
dude. Yeah, it also. I like that. It sounds like CC DeVille, which like no one's ever gone like.
Yeah,
I've recreated the perfect CC DeVille tone. It's like you can make the CC DeVille tone by going to Home Depot and buying a bucket of nails, but like that was the like insane was like the only thing that mattered. Line 6 had the insane channel, and it was like
you could tap without having any technique. You just you look at it, and it's like tapping.
Oh, dude, yeah, exactly. Like it just was the most heaps of gain you could ever have. So, what are you playing your RP3 into?
We had at the local music stores called Wachala Music. They were friends of my dad's, obviously, and you know they had a pro discount for, you know, before the Guitar Centers and all that were around, right? And they were Fender dealers, so they had their neon Fender sign in the window. You know, when you had to choose, are you Fender, are you Gibson, or Marshall? You know, so at some point, I got this it was like a tube hybrid, so it was solid state, but it had a preamp tube in it basically, and it was called a Rock Pro 700, which like every rehearsal space for like a period of time had one next to their PV keyboard amp, you know.
Yes.
Amp, you know?
No, exactly. Yeah, the curved front keyboard amp with the little sliders on it. And then was that it had like the really small knobs on it, like the pedal knobs on the amp, that Fender amp, right?
I think so. It you know, and it was just like, it was a clean amp, and then it had this drive channel that was like, I guess it was similar to like an MG5 Marshall or something, you know, but it was like a bunch of watts, you know, so you could play with a drummer, you know, and that was you know, at some point I got like a Strat. It was like a MIM Strat or something, and it, you know, it was just the coolest thing ever, you know, and then somehow I found a Blues Junior, you know. Yeah. Then pedals, and that's how I got my first Keeley pedals, because I heard Stevie Ray Vaughan finally, so I wanted to buy a Strat, you know, and put 12s on it and try to break my wrist, you know. and then I jumped on early days of the internet. We got on like eBay or something, and we were looking for. I heard like about like, oh well, all the cool guys play these Keeley modded pedals, you know, So I got some kind of Keeley mod, like I think a Keeley mod DS1, like the Seeing Eye mod. You know, and then years later I tell Robert that story at NAMM, and we're just laughing about, man, I was a little kid and I wanted to get a Keeley mod, you know.
Oh, dude, yeah. That was the you're a pro if you have a Keeley modded pedal. Or the Keeley compressor was like, that's the only pedal compressor that was acceptable for a while.
Yeah, it's the only one, and some people still feel that way.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and it's like, I'm sure you were watching the like early rig rundown videos, like that. I would stay up till 4 a.m. watching, and NAMM. Like I would read about all the NAMM stuff in the magazine, and then as soon as like YouTube came out, I was watching
Everything.
video from NAMM. I would start the playlist and just let it play. I'm gonna be up all night, but I'm just gonna watch every single video.
Do you feel like NAMM like changed your life? Because I totally have a story. Like NAMM has always been. I mean, I used to watch the videos like you, but then like the first time I met somebody that had been to NAMM, it was like, dude, you've been? What's it like? You know, and it's like he's like, bro. I mean, he was so nice about it, but I was just like, what is NAMM? You know?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was. Well, my dad went back in the day to the Nashville NAMM, which is always the smaller one, but
right.
And so like it was always a thing where I was like, okay, one day I want to go, but I always wanted to like go because I had a reason. I didn't want to like, because I always heard that it was like, oh, it's open to the general public, but only in the later times, and there's no one at the booths, and you can't touch anything. And so I was like, I don't care about that. Like I want to go and do it and be there.
Right.
So, but I didn't go to my first NAMM until 3 years ago.
Wow.
When we played. But yeah, it was a very full circle moment because I mean, but it, you know, it's been amazing, you know, and now I'm living out here. Like all these things are, you know, probably were helped by, if not directly a result of like, you know, just that thing, whether it's actually being at NAMM or just being obsessed with all these, with all the gear, you know, like.
Well, if you're obsessed with gear, you're going to end up at NAMM at some point, right? You know?
Yeah. Like there's no way. Like that's the thing is that like what we were talking about earlier, like I can't do anything else. Like I have basically my whole life only obsessed about guitar. And then I have this like ridiculously self-indulgent room that's behind me. You know, like it's just, it's a sickness, but it's like much better than, you know, many of the alternatives. But that's, I mean, yeah, that's so funny. So like those early rigs are just, and the thing is like, I'd probably hear it now and like not even be able to play it. But man, there's something magical about like just any distortion was like, yep, that's what I wanted. Right.
For me, at some point we ended up with this like crate amp. It wasn't carbited, thankfully. The carbid had gone away. But it was like a GFX 212 and it was loud for
dude. I know exactly what you're talking about.
And it had like three, it was a clean, a drive, and a more drive. And so it would always be crank the more drive, dime it, you know. But then like the flanger sound on there, and like the flange had like the deep that would, like the depth that would actually, you know,
oh yeah.
You know. So
yeah, that was that like throb to it.
Yeah. It was just the coolest sound ever. I
actually really want the GFX 210, right? Is that what it's, or 212?
212, I think.
212.
Yeah. But they had a few sizes though.
Yeah, and there's a few different models. I know there's one that had did yours have the blue faceplate?
I think so.
Because there's some that had a blue face panel, and then I think other ones were like black. But like those 212 crates, every local gig of like punk rock, and those things are balls loud. Yeah. Like so loud. And then I remember the first time I got a head, my buddy had that crate, and his had a red faceplate. And I got a Marshall JCM 2000 dual super lead, but this is not the DSL. This is a JCM 2000. And it was like the first like super like rock legit, but like I spent all of my money, traded all my pedals and probably a guitar and my amp just to get this head. And I didn't have a cab. So I plugged my buddy's like crate combo for that head, and that's what I used for a long time. And then I got a $60 at Radio Shack, RIP, 1x12 PA cab that was like particle board.
Oh yeah.
Like, and it's a PA cab. It's a, you know, with a horn. And I played that JCM through that also. And it was tough. It sounded pretty rough. And it was
like,
bad.
This guy's pretty mean. He's got something he's got to say, you know?
Oh no, it was like, I had a hard time. Like,
Ice
I think
picking?
that,
Stabby?
oh yeah. Yeah, it didn't sound right at all because it's not guitar speaker. I mean, it
Well,
was.
how about this? Nobody tells you when you're reading the catalog that to get the Marshall to sound like it does on the record, or you know, that's not what it sounds like in the room. You know, it's the harshest, stabbiest thing ever.
Dude.
And you know, you EQ that, you compress it on a console, you know, whatever. I mean, you do the stuff to it, and you know, and if you're standing in front of it, it's like, oh, good God, you know.
Oh yeah, well, the thing is like I got turned off on the Marshall thing at a really early age. I don't even know what it was. It was probably a JCM 900, but I was like, this is the shittiest sounding amp I've ever heard in my life. Because I had this expectation of exactly what you're talking about, like
Studio Magic.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like all those things. The amp is just one piece of the puzzle.
Right.
But I'm thinking I'm supposed to plug in and sound like Welcome to the Jungle. Like, it's
Right.
just, that's the sound. And so I was like, what the hell is this? Like, yeah,
Right.
It was so ice picky. And so it turned me way off on Marshalls. And then I was like, okay, JCM 2000, like I could probably get away with that. And then it's like, I didn't even think about a cab. What a joke that ended up being. But
we all do that stuff though. I mean that's how you learn, you know?
yeah. So through all of, I mean, I'm sure like myself, I don't know if you ever got into the Craigslist trading.
Oh yeah.
But me and my little brother got deep, real deep into the Craigslist, and we were meeting people at sketchy gas stations. One time I traded the Vox Valvetronics 212
Oh yeah.
for a Jackson Dinky in gunmetal gray. But I traded it, took my little brother, and we met this guy at an extended stay hotel, and there was between 1 and 5 million cigarette butts in the hotel room. Just like you're walking on a layer of cigarette butts.
Blinds closed. Like
Oh,
it's dark.
dude, the whole thing was the weird, like shadiest, weirdest thing. And we're like, I'm just like 16, and I'm trading this amp with this like dude who's just been through some stuff in his life. But I went through all these things, and then I finally like found out what I wanted and what I really liked. So what kind of gear, and then we'll move on from gear talk in a minute, but so what did you end up kind of finding that allowed you to express yourself? Like what's the gear that you're loving right now, for different reasons than, you know, Insane Channel?
So a lot of the things that I kind of fell in love with or whatever, or fell out of love with, it's like it was just what was around. It's like what could you get your hands on, and then at some point, you know, I started working at Guitar Center right out of high school, before the company went public. So it was a whole, I mean, they put a lot of mom and pops out of business, but it was a cool spot to work in its day, especially in Chicago.
Oh yeah.
And
Dude, I worked at store 722 in Memphis.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I was at 622 in Hobart, and then I worked at Cicero and Halstead, because back in the day they would code you, and you could actually go work at another store and be on their payroll and all that stuff. You could get. It took like a day to process, but they could say, "Hey, you're going to go work in Arlington Heights for a week," you know, or 2 weeks or however long they need you. And if you were down to do it, you know, they'd spiff you, or you know, you'd be in a bigger market. Like if you're in the suburb market and then now you're in the downtown market, you know?
Oh yeah.
You know, so that kind of stuff. But so then I had access to all this stuff, and I met dudes. It's like, wait, you have a 335? Wait,
Yeah.
you've seen? No, you have one? Like, you know, so and it's kind of like there was like this whole silver phase that I went through, because for a while there were all these cats in Chicago that were like, you got to have a 335 and like a twin, like a drip edge 69 kind of, you know, and that, or like you could have a Strat and like a super reverb, like that was like the Stevie Ray.
Yeah.
Every blues guy had that rig for a minute. So I kind of get and I still have them in the next room. I have like this Super Bassman 100 with dual 15s. It's like, it's a Showman with no reverb.
Yeah.
And you know, so I have all these silver faces still haunting my pad. And but yeah, so I kind of, with my keyboard rig, I mean, in the old days you had like a Rhodes, you had a Hammond, but then like all the keyboards would have all the stuff and they'd all be pretty good. If you got a workstation, it costs like $3,000, but you got, everything was pretty darn close. So I said, well, I want that, but in my guitar thing. So I had to have like 3 Strats.
Yeah.
So I mean, it kind of depends on what I need to be at that moment. You know, if I'm doing work for someone else, I might still need to be John Mayer or Stevie Ray. And then, so it's not about who I am, it's about what the song needs. So I've got that, but I've really, obviously I love everything that Keeley's doing. Great stuff. Great. I love when he came out with like in 2013, 14, he started doing all his DSP stuff before everybody else was doing DSP. And he really, you know, went, so I had all that stuff, and I finally felt like I was getting this like super saturated sustainy thing where it was just like I could bend a note and it would ring out forever, and I was like, this is what I've been after, you know. And
sustain pedal.
the Sustainiac, right? Or the Fernandez, if you're older, you know.
Oh yeah. Fernandez sustainer. Yeah, that's always the dream. It's like, how do you have infinite sustain?
Yeah, I've been really. I met this guy at NAMM a couple years back named Adrian Thorpe. He's Thorpe Effects, and he works with Dan Dinosaural. So they've been rebooting all of like the Meatball and all the. God, I should know this. I forget if it's Love Pedal or Love Tone, but
it's Love Tone.
Yeah, Love Tone. They were those really gigantic pedal. They're like all the like 90s bands had like. So they've done like V2s of some of those circuits with Dan coming on. And that was like mythical stuff, because Boutique was like, okay, you had the catalog with all the cool stuff. Yeah. But then like you'd hear like, wait, what is this other? So Keeley and those, you know, so.
Mail order. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I've befriended all these guys now, and I play their stuff, but Thorpe really, he's kind of that Pete Cornish school. He just he thinks so outside the box. Everything gets a boost in it, just in case your volume drops down, you know, or you can blend clean signal in, or you have an EQ, like a tone knob for the modulation, you know. So he's just doing things that solve problems, and I'm just like, that's so, you know. And he's ex-military too, like I am. So so we really connect on a personal level, and I love his pedals because it, you know, every company, they kind of, there's something about a Boss Drive pedal that just always feels like I'm back in high school jamming out.
Dude, yeah.
So, you know, like when I talk with Yoshi or Aaron or any of these guys at Boss, it's like whenever I'm playing a Boss pedal, I kind of feel like a kid again. And I kind of don't have to be like, you know, like if you're playing a jazz gig and you feel like, okay, I'm in my suit jacket and I'm, you know, like it feels like a little like, okay, we're going to be real formal here. And the Boss thing, I always feel like, let's just throw down, you know, like.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes me think of like playing in the garage.
Right.
Like we literally would play for hours just jamming.
So whether it's like Boss or Keeley or Thorpe, which those tend to be some of the main guys I'm playing their stuff. And it's like there's a voice that it's almost like whoever's designing their pedals, you know, like the Keeley or whoever, but like there's a frequency that his ear hears and he likes. So you can find like that, like the Oxblood from Keeley has this like certain mid frequency that for whatever reason it's the sustain thing. So you play a note and you bend it and it rings out forever, you know. So those are some of the pedal people. And then obviously I'm playing Eddie's amps. My Quantum Zen is at a rehearsal space all the time, you know, so we play there on that. And then, you know, the Polaris has been kind of one of my studio amps, and then other things as needed. But yeah, and Mahalo amps. I did a lot of work with their stuff. You probably ran into those in the South, right?
I think so. It's got like the white kind of bold lettering on the front, right? Okay, yeah.
And his AEM 50 circuit is kind of shares some stuff with JTM 45. Okay. You know, so Marshall, but not like what we were talking about, like JCM 800s, and you know, the older bluesier bassman Marshall kind of thing. Yeah. So I really like organic amps. So then I can just play guitar into amp, or I can slam them with pedals and then they do whatever I want, you know. That tends to be my deal.
Yeah. So what about keys? What are you playing these days?
With keys, I'm playing Hammond. I'm a Hammond artist, so I've got their SKX double manual. So it's got two full boards in a 40-pound deal. So way easier. Wow. I had an M2 back in the day that was like obnoxiously big, you know.
Yeah, I've had to help carry some of those in.
and yeah, so it's like 40 pounds, and it's got this little like grip handle in the back, so you grab that and then you just support it, and it's super easy. Nice. Got a flight case for that, and that's just like the cool thing about the Hammond clone wheels that they make themselves is it's got a really solid Leslie built in. The Hammond will do jazz. If you want to be a serious like jazz B3 guy, it can do that. It can do the screaming stuff. You know, it seems like when you look at other companies, there's a lot of like they're really good at screaming stuff, but they're not so good at like playing Jimmy Smith or you know or that Memphis sound where it's real greasy. Like it's the upper. Right. You know, it's the upper stuff with the Leslie swirling and no like low frequency. Like some of those don't sound right, you know.
That's my biggest thing is I feel like maybe it has to do with like the program. I don't really understand how they emulate all this stuff, but it does seem like a lot of times the upper horn and they're really like screaming that sounds fine, but it's the lower stuff, that growl, that almost never. It's rarely feels right. And if anybody's going to get it right, I mean, Hammond would be the ones to get it right.
And like that low stuff should be like syrupy, you know, like it should be really saturated.
Oh yeah.
You know, and not just booming, you know, because sometimes they get it, but like they get characteristic. Same with like the modeler, like the old modelers versus what we got now. It would sound cool, but it wouldn't feel right, you know?
Yeah. That's the thing is that, I want to feel that because that lower horn spinning, like that takes me back to playing on Beale Street and like that has all the grease to it, you know? And even if the upper horn and as you play higher, it's a little cleaner, but when you get that low stuff, like it needs to really kind of, I don't know, give back in a way.
Well, and it fills space in a mix. That's something I learned. Like even if you're just playing a root note, like a bass note or a root and a 5, if you're doing that, it's like it takes up this space, and it's like it's not even adding information. You might not even want to hear it. You just pull it down, and it just glues everything together. Yeah.
No, I totally agree. So that's cool. So that's impressive that it's that lightweight and you've got the full deal going on. So how do you express yourself differently on keys and guitar? Like, and I know it's probably, you know, dependent on song to song, gig to gig, but what are some things that you feel like if you're trying to say something, you know, what ways do you express yourself differently on guitar versus keys?
I think that guitar feels very, there's something guttural about it, you know. It feels like an extension of me. I can be a little more reckless on guitar, you know, and you can bend these notes. And with keyboards, you have modulation wheels and pitch bends and stuff, so you can do some of that. But you know, it's a different. You literally have to hit a target note on a keyboard, you know. Whereas on a guitar, you can hit the note on a fret, or you can bend into it, and so I definitely feel like certain emotions, you know, intensity, especially, you know, if you're driving something, that always feels easier on a guitar. So I like the drive of a song a lot of times to be on a guitar. On a keyboard, I really like ambient stuff, and I do ambient stuff on guitar, but it's just different because you can kind of spread these voicings, you know,
Right.
differently. So you can hit 2.5 octaves real quick on a keyboard, whereas on a guitar, you have to really work for that, or you have to overdub,
Right.
you know, or shimmer, you know,
Yeah.
CCM shimmer, you know.
Oh, dude. Yeah. Oh, yeah. All the worship guitar sounds.
Yeah, or the edge, you know. I mean, and
That's where it all came from.
well, and you know, the producer that was working with him, Daniel Lanois, too. That's a
Dude. Yeah. I mean, and there are some like really, I mean, U2 is one of those things where like people either love U2 or hate them, but like either way, you're gonna hear their songs, and I don't feel like anybody's gonna be pissed off about hearing a U2 song. But there's some like really creative stuff done with the way that they recorded, especially like Joshua Tree, you know, like the modulation from the tape and creating this space harmonically in a mix, because it's such, I mean, it's really stripped down. You got 4 dudes, you know.
Well, and BBD chips in what was it, the Korg SDE, or no, is the Boss SDE, or like Roland delays, and then there were Korgs too. And,
yeah, the Korgs,
2290s, you know,
SDD 3000, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2290s. Yeah, exactly. Like there's all this magic harmonic content in those delays that kind of fill space in that way.
Yeah.
Have you ever like done the pedal board, like the keys into a pedal board? Because I know some dudes in Memphis would always be playing, like they had their Rhodes and there's like a pedal board taped to the plastic top of the Rhodes, and it was like,
I'm gonna build one here soon. Actually, I finally got all the stuff for it. Voodoo Lab sent me one of their dingbats that has the pedal power underneath, and I've got like some of Thorpe's modulation stuff because they're really thick. He does all analog, so that's super thick, and then I'll have like a Keeley 30 MS, which is like the Abbey Road kind of double tracker deal. Cool. So, you know, and then I've got all the new Boss delays that have the tap tempo, and like I really want to use the Space Echo for that, because like on a Rhodes or and Radial, they did this Key Largo, which is like a DI box that will do like 3 stereo keyboards, and it's got an effects loop for pedals, so you can have your line level signal off the keyboards coming in, and that won't screw with the pedals, because hitting the front of a pedal with line level sometimes is funky, you know?
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I love, like, Radial's one of those companies that solves problems.
That's their whole mission statement.
Dude, like, that's the whole, and it's just like, I mean, a JDI is the direct box. There's no other direct box to use. If you're gonna go passive direct box that you just know is gonna work.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not any way affiliated with them. I just love that. Like, I love that. That just exists there. So how much of your like gigging and session playing, how much of it are you playing your music, or are you mostly a hired gun? That's what I am, mostly a hired gun. I struggle to put, I don't know, to do my own stuff. I have a passion for it and I'm determined to do it, but it's much harder for me to spend as much energy on it.
Right.
But what is that similar to you, or are you doing a lot of your own stuff?
It kind of changes in cycles, or there may be 4 months here or this, but every year at a minimum I'm going to do at least some kind of single or something that's my stuff. We have this thing in New Mexico called New Mexico Music Awards, and there's all these people that retire here. Like I take lessons on jazz guitar, which is usually I have this 40s Epiphone made in New York. That's like a big, swing guitar.
Yeah.
And I'll take lessons from my teacher, who he's like 82, 83, but he was a Wrecking Crew guitarist. Wow. His name's Michael Anthony. And so he will study a Sinatra song, and then he'll say, well, when I played with Frank, or Miles, or,
right.
So, and
that's amazing.
So these people retire here, and like John Kurzweg from he did a Jewel record, he did Godsmack, he did like the first 3 multi-platinum Creed albums, the Puddle Mud, so all this stuff that was all over alternative radio, like he had a hand in. He lives here now, so, and Larry lived here for a while, so there's all these really killer producers and stuff that enter in the awards. So I like just being in that crew of folks, and just seeing where, so I've won 4, which I'm super proud of, and we have so much talent out here. So at a minimum, I'm always going to do something for that, if nothing else, but
right.
But yeah, lately I've been doing more on the original front. I've been, doing some solo gigs, and some of that is because I wanted to play more jazz. I've just been studying jazz, so I've been into it. And then that helps my chops if I got to do a pop thing.
Yeah.
Whoa, how did you think about that? It's like, well, it's not really that. It's just this,
Yeah, but it puts you in that headspace to be thinking outside the box.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so I mean, I always have there's keyboard gigs, there's guitar gigs, there's fly gigs, there's restaurant gigs. I can go from one, and then I still play in church when I'm home. So it's there's always another gig, and I like them all for different reasons. In LA, you can go play. What is it, like the Baked Potato or something, which is not a huge room, but Larry Carlton will be in there,
Yeah, the Baked Potato is a magical space. Yeah, I mean, there's stuff. Oh, dude, yeah, that I try to be in there as much as possible, because it's all of my heroes that I've of my whole life are just there. But yeah, I mean, and like I said, I want to get to playing out more. And I think that probably just means doing putting more energy into my own music here, because if not, I'll just stay here in my studio and never leave. And that's not good for my mental health. That's not good to stretch me musically and everything. So but
you never know what comes through, though. That's if you're dialed in as a guy who gets, I don't know if you're up on Fiverr or what, but if you're just a dude that people find and they go, will you play on my track? It's like somehow, I don't know how people find me sometimes. It's mostly referral based, but it's sometimes somebody just finds you, and then it's like, okay, yeah, sure, let's do it. And you're like, what the heck is this? Okay, how am I going to approach this?
Yeah, it's so weird, because, and it goes back to the I don't know, there's something about just being a hippie that I think helps me, but I am working on a song for a commercial for like just this most random company. I'm like, I don't even know how to think about doing this. Or like I produced a song on a Latin stand-up special for HBO, and it's like, how did I end up here? But I love it because it like puts me in this space of like, okay, I've got to really like focus in on something and take an idea and try to like explore every avenue. And it really like, that's my favorite thing to do. And then on the other hand though, is that I think I need to balance that out personally with like playing out more, because I just sit here and get weird by myself, you know, all day, every day. And that isn't always the most positive thing for me, you know, but that's cool. So this year, what are some of the stuff that you have planned for your music and playing with other people?
Well, we entered the New Mexico Music Awards has a category, and they have for the last couple of years. And I think they might do one more year of it, but it's Route 66 because obviously Route 66 runs through Albuquerque and, you know, from Chicago to LA. And we did a really fantastic recording. I put my teacher on guitar because, you know, he's played that song for like 40 years, you know. So and you know, he remembers the old TV show. And that hired you know, a jazz drummer, so we've got like some quoting of things like kind of sing style drums, you know, so he's really just mashing the toms, and you know, it's a really high energy thing. So we're entering that, and I guess all the winners, we'll find out if we're nominated, of course, which hopefully we are. But I'm just super proud of that recording because I got to stretch a little and play a little else. You know, I tend to go that kind of greasy Memphis, Chicago, bluesy on keys. And this was a little more jazz oriented. You know, there's still some of that grease in there, but and then, you know, we kind of had more of a rock energy from the drums, upright bass though, and you know, the upright bass guy's just a monster, Milo Jaramillo, and he you know, everybody's got to do really great, you know, artist gigs and stuff with different jazz folks. So I'm just super stoked with how it turned out. And then whoever wins the overall multi-year thing ends up with their recording in the Smithsonian. So, you know,
wow.
Hopefully we'll have a shot at that, you know.
That's a really cool thing.
Yeah.
Like,
you know, I mean,
dang, that's wild. Well,
yeah,
man, yeah.
I'm excited. So is that song out, or is it
to be?
Not yet. We're gonna release it later this year. You know, a lot of times, and you know, don't quote me on this, but a lot of times when we enter stuff, we try to release it around when the awards are, because then it's like, if we win, we're posting about winning, or if we're nominated, we're posting about not, you know. So it's kind of free buzz, you know. So,
that's just,
you know,
strategic. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll see what happens there.
That's cool though.
Yeah, and there's some other original you know, I'm planning to get into the studio to do some more original tunes, you know, or a tune. And I know we've got a mix that we tracked last year. So, you know, just, it's kind of like there's always stuff in the reel, and we just got to go refine it a little bit and see what happens.
Yeah, that same here. I feel like I have a ton of stuff that are like kind of in various states of being finished or whatever, but it's, you know, but at the end of the day, it's like I look back, I'm like, what did I actually put out of my own? And I'm like, shoot, I need to get on it. But man, I'm excited, really excited to hear that recording. That sounds really phenomenal. And then just gigging like a madman the rest of the year.
A lot of that. Last year had a ton of studio work. I mean, like I would haul like I've got a Korg Nautilus, which is their flagship workstation. I've been working with a piano company called Dexibel, which they some of them used to work for Roland, and they started doing their own thing with Italian-based pianos. And it's like there's the low end of the piano has like 14-second samples without looping. Like, you hit a key and then you hear the cycle, and then it's constantly like diminishing the volume. But they actually have these pianos sampled 14 seconds. It's again quad processing, so all that stuff. But when I take that thing to the studio or the Hammond, the engineers in town, they're just like, holy cow, man, what is this thing? Like, I mean, we've seen all these other keyboards, but like nobody has the ones you've got, and they sound different.
Dude, that's a big part of it, like being able to show up and get the right sound and get it quickly will get you hired again.
Right.
Like I feel like when I was just out of college, I went to this music college. Like that was the thing, is that like all of my money was in my guitar rig. And I spent hours just knowing how to show up. And my goal was like for a sound guy to be like, put a 57 on it. And I was like, start off with everything flat and let me know if you roll anything off. And it's like, how can I get it to where they don't have to really roll much of anything off? They probably need to roll some low end off, depending on what the stage is like or whatever. But like, that was, and I feel like that's why I got hired. It's because I just showed up and had a good sound quick.
Good tone matters, I mean.
Dude, good tone saves lives.